depending on.
Literally just happened right before I left.
So then this is your piece, and this is your piece.
At least they believe that you have the ability to give to them.
So this is the point. This is the point. That a child, why does a child go, right? Like if a child wants a piece of candy, toy, pick anything. They go to the neighbor next door. They ask their teacher. No, they go right away. They ask their parents. And they don't just say it once or twice. They'll say it 150,000 times until either they get it or they get locked up. But it's because they believe that they're going. This is the only source. They don't even think to go to the neighbor. And I bet you the neighbor would give you the kid the candy before the parent would give the kid the candy. Right? But yet they don't go to the neighbor. They go right to the parent. Right?
So that's why grandparents are great.
That's why grandparents are great. So how good would it be if we could act like that to Kodesh Baruch Hu, that the first time we need something, we need money, we need a rafua, we need help with something, we don't turn to the stock market, we don't turn to the doctors, we don't turn to... Right away we turn to Kodesh Baruch Hu. How good would that be, Sister Nachman? Ki alo Hashem Yisborach kavar karana bonim. Kodesh Baruch Hu already called us children. We're his children. In the Torah, he calls us Shekasav bonim atem Hashem lakechem. The Bori Olam and Devarim, Moshe Rabbeinu tells, says, Klazo, you're children. Burn me here. We're called Banim. Al Kain, says Rabbi Nachman, it's not a joke. It's not fluff. When the Torah Kedosha calls us Banim, right? It's not just, it's like you just say in a dramatic way, you're like children. No. The Torah says this is the emes. The difficulty is to feel it. Because intellectually everybody knows it. We all learn the pasuk. But a child that doesn't go to his parent intellectually, I intellectually believe that you are the one to give me the candy. You're a robot. The kid doesn't think, he just runs right to the parent and starts crying his brains out. There's no thought process. There's no thinking. They're connected. So that's the goal we have to get to. That's not an easy feat. But that's what we want to get to. Al Kain Tov Ma'od, and this is Rabbi Nachman says again. Al Kain, he says, Tov Ma'od, L'far Sichos V'tza'aro L'fanav Yisbarach. How good is it if a person would be able to express his sicha, his language, V'tza'aro, and his pains. L'fanav Yisbarach. A person's in pain. Who do? Either they tell a friend sometimes, or if they're in pain, they tell a therapist. How about a person goes to Kodesh Baruch Hu, if they would really, really believe, and not just believe intellectually, but emotionally, and it's the real deal, that a Kodesh Baruch Hu is the one who listens and who's going to help, then maybe they would turn to Kodesh Baruch Hu first. And how good would that be? What kind of madrig of emunah and bitachon would this person be at if he would turn to Kodesh Baruch Hu first, or second? Hopefully first, but even if it would be second, and to speak out, pain. How often does a person do that? If ever in his entire life. And how should he act? Like you should go to a Kodesh Baruch Hu like a refined person. Listen, sir, you're 38 years old. Why? What are you losing yourself on the Kodesh Baruch Hu? He's the master of the world. He's the king. He's the Rav. He's the Shalit. Says Rabbi Nachman. No. Don't get so refined over here. Al Kain Tov Mo L'far Sichos V'tza'aro L'fanav Yisbarach Keben Shekova Lifnei Aviv. Like a child who's complaining. How great would it be if you could actually come to a Kodesh Baruch Hu with complaints like a child? Lifnei Aviv. Like a child who's complaining to his father. B'tenuos shel chen v'rachem. What does that mean? Tenuos means movements of chen and rachem. Chen means what? They translate, it's not a good translation, but grace. Movements that finds favor in the parent's eyes. V'rachamim. Shakorin, pestin. You know what pestin means? I have no idea. But they translate it in the BRI English version of Sichos HaRan. I have no idea what pestin is. Pestering. Shakorin, pestering. How great would it be if you could go to a Kodesh Baruch Hu and complain to him like a father and pester him like a child with tenuos. What kind of movements do you think he's talking about? You've ever seen your kid? No? Tell me, how did your kid say when they want the piece of candy or the toy? What do they say? Tati, can I please have it? Like with their hands? Yeah, right. What do they do?
Now.
Now, their hands, or if the girls, they put on the sides and they give you like that little sassiness, or they kick and they scream, right? Right? What kind of madrega would that be that you believe in a Kodesh Baruch Hu so much, Lamaisa, that the Bari Olam is really your father, that you'll even make tenuos? That's a certain madrega of a relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu.
So we're saying you're supposed to ask him like a child, or you're still somebody's child when you're 20, 30, 40, 50 also. You're going to ask your father or your mother the same way when you're 15, 20, 30, 40, 50? As
No,
you
they
were
sue
when
you
you were 8 or 9?
They sue you then.
Don't laugh. There was a child many, many years ago in Great Neck that sued the parents to pay for his college education. They took the parents to court and they had to pay.
A little bit more mature pastoring.
I'm just saying.
I understand. I understand the question. It's true. It would be a little bit silly, we would think. But at the same time, there's a certain, and this is what I wanted to point out. He says here, Betunu shel chen v'rachamim. Now, I'll tell you, if you look at in the English translation, they don't even translate these words. They leave them out. I'll show you. They leave out the translation of these words because they're hard words to translate. Saying you're talking about a kid complaining and pestering his parent, Betenuos shel chen v'rachamim, movements of chen and rachamim. When the kid is throwing a fit, you wouldn't necessarily call those tenuos of chen and rachamim. They're more annoying and vexing, right? But at the end of the day, see, if a parent...
You're the one who has chen and rachamim. That's what you gave it to them.
But says, but no, the movements do.
You have the child as fetchy and as difficult. If you're able to take a step back and look at them and say,
exactly, that's what I want to point out. Exactly, that's what I want to point out. That when a parent gets annoyed at a child, it's because we don't want to give the child and he's just bothering me or he's just annoying me and I just want to do something else right now. I want some quiet. But if a parent would take a step back for a minute and not be bothered and just look at the scene and try to see objectively and see you have a child and see that this child is coming to you because they have no other place to go for what they want, and they're so connected and they have so much trust in you as a parent that they're willing to throw themselves on the floor to try to get what they want from you. There's a certain chen and rachamim that it finds in the parent's eyes. The problem is that we're usually annoyed by them because we want quiet. We want them to be refined. We want them to just be, a 15-year-old, even though they're 6. No, 6-year-olds kick and scream and complain and are annoying sometimes.
Not that you watch TV, but if somebody was watching this as a scene going on, where you're watching, it could be actually funny. It could be.
If you're not the one emotionally involved in it, right?
It could be endearing.
But the problem is that most parents, and I'm one of them, and I know how it feels, is sometimes we get annoyed by it. But if you take a minute and think about this scene, that this child was given to you, and he relies on you fully, right? He could go next door to the neighbor for candy, but he doesn't go to the next door neighbor. He goes to you. He trusts in you. There's a certain sweetness. There's a certain chen that you can find in the child when he's kicking and screaming. Again, you have to get over your own stuff, which is not so easy. We get very emotionally bothered. Just be quiet already. But isn't that the kid acting his age? So Nachman says how good it would be if a person could get to that madrega. Yes, it might look funny. I know, Ben, you're right. I hear. If you would do it to your adult parents or something. But to a Kodesh Baruch Hu, we're always little children. We're always little children. That doesn't really mean necessarily kick and scream, but it means that a person can really feel that Kodesh Baruch Hu is Tati, that he can come to him with a certain sicha, like a child would. Says Nachman weiter, he says, and even if a person appears to him that according to his actions, what he's done, he's not like a child to Kodesh Baruch Hu. He's not really keeping the mitzvahs as well as he could. Once in a while, a low sase comes his way and he doesn't really deal with it too well. So he says, I'm not a child. And this is sometimes in the conscious, and more often than not, it's in the subconscious, that a person is prevented from feeling close to a Kodesh Baruch Hu like a child, because subconsciously he can't work out. It's in the subconscious that he could be acting in a certain way, which is not the way a Kodesh Baruch Hu necessarily would like, according to the Torah and the rules, and yet still, like Rabbi Nachman says, to feel like a son. He can't. It's opposite natures. My mind's saying I'm like a son, but my heart says, but I'm really not. So to become emotionally, to be intellectual, okay, fine, okay, Rabbi Nachman, I got it. Yes, I'm like a child. It's Banamotem. I get it. Fine, I believe you. But to feel that way to the point where a person can come to a Kodesh Baruch Hu like a child, it's very difficult. But says Rabbi Nachman, he says you can't stop. He says Im kol zeh halo Hashem yisborach karanu banim. It's like the Kodesh Baruch Hu called you banim. And not only that, we have a famous machlokas in the Gemara in Kedushin or Meir versus Rabbi Yehudot. What happens when you have banim, you have children, and they're not acting like children, even to the point where they're doing avodah zarah? Are they called banim or they're not called banim? Rabbi Yehudot says they're not called banim l'Hashem. If they're not acting like children, they're not keeping to the rules, you can't call them banim. And Rebbe famously says, we pass like this, Rebbe, benkach u benkach nikru banim. Or he says, benki benkach u benkach kruyim l'chabanim. The Torah says you are considered children whether or not you sin. Now, when it comes to a ben, a pashut, the word ben, a child, that is DNA. No sin in the world can a son do and lose that status. So the machlokas between Rabbi Yehudot and Rabbi Meir is, what exactly does the Torah mean by ben? Does it mean really, really? Are we really, really like banim? To the point where you can literally never lose that shame ben? Rabbi Meir says, yeah, it's exactly what a Kodesh Baruch Hu is saying. We are a chelik l'kami mal, like a child is a chelik of his father. You can never lose it. It doesn't matter what he does. Because whatever a person does, it's never his essence. At the level of essence, right, which is much, much deeper than an action of a person, by the level of essence, the atzmius, you're a child. Rabbi Yehudot says no. No, that's not really what the pasuk means. It means that we're called children when you act in a certain way, you follow the rules. So Kodesh Baruch Hu calls you a child, you're very closely connected to him, and he'll do good things for you. But if you don't follow his rules, he doesn't give you the shame ben. And our mayor says, no. Your very essence, you're a child. You can never lose that.
Unless you speak deceitfully. If you're not speaking truthfully, then you can lose.
Okay.
It's in the archive.
It's in the archive? Okay. So we'll see. Now it's interesting. Benkach u benkach krim l'chabanim. Now to be considered banim, it's we paskin, you can never lose that. But there's one way you could lose it besides Saparka was saying. One way you could lose it is if you don't think you're a ben. If you don't think you're a ben, if you don't think you're a child, then you're not a child. Because then you won't act like a child. But the Rebbe says, in a Kodesh Baruch Hu's eyes, benkach u benkach, no matter what you do, you're called a ben. It's up to now, after that psak, it's up to us to always say, fine, you're right, I believe that. I believe it. So all you need to have is what? You have to have a munah. That's why the gematria banim, if you look at the word banim, what's the gematria banim? 102, which is Gematria Emunah. And if you look at the word Benkach, look at the word Benkach, Beis Yud Nun, and then Kaf, and then another. 102. So exactly. So Benkach hu Benkach. Whether you're doing good, whether you're not doing good, Benkach. If you have a little bit of Emunah, you're Korean Banim. You're called Banim because at the end of the day, you have to just believe that you'll still be a Ben. It doesn't matter what you do because by essence, you're a child. That's it. And it says that even if somehow Kodesh Baruch Hu would expel me, kick me out of Gan Eden, say, you know what, you're not a child anymore. Even if that would be possible somehow, Hatov Bein of Yaseh, fine. Let a Kodesh Baruch Hu do what he wants. He wants to kick me out, he can kick me out. But Allah lasos as shali, lasos asmi keben. I still need to do what I have to do, and I'm still going to act like a Ben. I'm not going to leave. Because you're going to try to kick me out? You're going to say, you're not a kid anymore? Says Nachman, I know the secret. The secret is, I'm always a kid. Even if a Kodesh Baruch Hu, this is what Rebbe Nachman says. This is why it's classic. This is like classic Rebbe Nachman. Even if a Kodesh Baruch Hu would come and say to you, you are no longer my child. Everybody else, they're my child. Except for you. Right? Who felt like that? Acher. Right? Shuvu banim shovavim. All children can return. Chutz, says chutz me'acher. The pasuk doesn't say chutz me'acher. Elisha ben Avuya, he felt like he did something wrong. He could never repent. So the pasuk says shuvu banim shovavim. Return, my wayward children. Return, do tshuva, the ones who have gone off. And Acher heard in his ears, chutz me'acher. Can't go back. And he didn't come back. Rabbi Nachman says, there's no such thing. That even if you would hear in your ears, chutz me'acher, never believe such a thing. You say, Kodesh Baruch Hu, you called me a child in the Torah. It says in the Torah. It says, Banim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem. And we possibly remember, Benkach hu Benkach kruyim banim. You can't kick me out. This is what Rabbi Nachman says. You say it to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. So if a person thinks something in his head, we're going to see. You'll see a little bit more what he's referring to. These machshavas. If a person has a machshav in his head that a Kodesh Baruch Hu Kilu is coming to him in a dream, that Kodesh Baruch Hu says, "Listen, I'm sorry. After all that you've done, I cannot call you a child anymore. You've gone too far. I gave you too much. I gave you all that allowance money. I gave you all those kochos. You're just not making anything of yourself. You're out of here." And Rabbi says, you tell Kodesh Baruch Hu in the nicest way, I'm sorry, I'm not leaving. I'm a child. You called me a child once, you never took that away. It says in the Torah, in your Torah. And you stand your ground. Chazak. And how good, again, with this tov, how good would it be if a person was able to arouse from his heart certain supplications, certain requests of a Kodesh Baruch Hu to the point that he actually sheds a tear. He believes that a Kodesh Baruch Hu is mamish his father, and even if he feels distant, he could cry and say, I want to come back home. Don't kick me out of the house. Like a child. Now, who kicked him out of the house? Kodesh Baruch Hu doesn't really never kicks anybody out. We feel as though Kodesh Baruch Hu kicked us out of the house. Because there's a list of rules, and I didn't follow the rules, right? You know, like a kid punishes himself. I didn't follow the rules, so I'm a loser, I'm kicked out. And he slams the door and he runs out of the house. And the father says, where are you going? I never kicked you out. But it appears to the kid, that's a logical brain. If I don't follow the rules, then I can't be in the clan. And Nachman says that's insanity. You have to fight against it. That's the Yitzhar. Don't leave. Vishamati, listen to what he says over here. Vishamati, Maisa Vizikni. He says, I heard a Maisa from my grandfather, Rabbi Nachman Moher Denko, a Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov Kodesh, Zechron Levracha. Kishahaya al Svina. One time he was on a boat. There was one time that he didn't have any bread. He hadn't eaten food in many days. We don't know from such things. He got to a certain city on the boat, and there was no Jews, there was only Arabs. And one Arab felt bad for my grandfather. He obviously looked emaciated, starving, and he gave him bread to eat. There was many days he had not yet eaten. And Rabbi Nachman, my grandfather, washed, right? He washed for bread, and he said Berachas HaMotzi. The bread's in front of him, and he said Berachas HaMotzi. Now you have 3 seconds at most. You got to get that bread in your mouth, right? That's halach. What happened? And right before he took the bite, a thought came to my grandfather. Al tilachem es lechem ra'ai. Don't. It's a pasuk in Mishlei. Don't eat bread with those who have mean eyes. Ra'ai.
I read that the other day.
Well, maybe you're reading Proverbs.
No, it was in one of the.
Gemara Sota?
Yeah, it was one of the things. Don't eat. Would it also be mean ayin hara? Somebody who has ayin hara?
Could be they translate it like that. But the more partial way is it's just someone who has mean eye. So Yishmaelim, who could be to the world they have some mean eyes. So he thought right before he ate the bread, it says in Mishnah, you can't eat bread with these people. Now he's stuck. He said hamotzi. He's got to eat the bread. You can't eat the bread because Mishnah says not to eat the bread. Throw out the machshava, throw out the bread. What do? It says Nachman. Our thoughts are not nothing. Our thoughts are real. There's some real powerful stuff going on. Rabbi Nachman, his grandfather, said this. He was talking about how machshavas are very serious. It just popped into his head at that moment. Where'd that come from? Kodesh Baruch Hu sent that machshava to him. I didn't know what to do, says Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman, not rest of his grandfather. I already said hamotzi. I said the bracha, gotta eat, but at the same time I really didn't want to eat because I had this machshava and I was very nervous. Now la halacha, you gotta eat the bread. Just because you have some kind of machshava. But we're talking about a tzaddik here. And the tzaddik's machshavas are not the same as our machshavas. So now he's stuck, probably within a few seconds. Ba'al machshavto, another thought came to him. Ve'es ha'orvim tzivisi l'chalkalach. This is pasuk, I think, Eliyahu Navi, by Eliyahu Navi, that a Kodesh Baruch Hu commanded the ravens to be Parnes. Eliyahu was running away from Achav. I think Achav and Izevel was running away, and he had to hide. And the Kodesh Baruch Hu sent ravens to bring food to Eliyahu Navi. But the word orvim is just like what word? Yeah, Aravim, like Arabs. I sent the Arabs to feed you. So when that thought came to his head, he knew if I was achal, then he could eat. Okay? Before I go on for a second, why do you think he's... What shaykh is this maisa to the Sicha? It's a very nice story. It's very gishmak. What shaykh is? Let's just finish up one more line before we get to that. V'amar Rabbeinu Zechron L'Bracha Be'ez Sipur Azos. And Rabbi Nachman said when he was telling over this story, Rabbi Nachman said it was taka the right thing that his grandfather paused because of that original machshava of don't eat bread with the mean people. It was not how a thought came to him, it was the emes. At that moment, HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't want him to eat. But then another thought came. So what's he talking about? We'll get to the answer in a second. Rabbi Nachman's going to say, what do you think? What shaykh is this maisa to what we were just talking about?
Do you think that you're not right to be abundant to Kodesh Baruch Hu? That machshava also comes from him too. But then another machshava will come to you, right? That will
That's
say
exactly what it is.
otherwise.
Exactly what it is. These are machshavas that are coming. Yeah, let's see what Rabbi Nachman says. Exactly what it is. Kamo came leading call her machshavas abam al adam leval below. so do all machshavas that come to a person to mess the person up. Afterwards, the Kodesh Baruch will send you another machshava to bring you close. The person gets it. It appears in my head that a Kodesh Baruch came and said, "You're kicked out of Gan Eden. You're not my kid." Did a Kodesh Baruch actually come and say that? Did that happen? Did my Rebbe come and say? Did my parent come and say, "You're kicked out of the house"? No, I felt depressed. I felt bad. I judged myself. It was a machshava zor. So some people, that's it. They take one machshava and they're out. They chuck the whole thing. Done. And Nachman says, whoa. There are machshavas like that to the valuable person, but hold on. Just like sometimes you get a machshava, don't eat the bread with the mean people, but if you just wait. Another machshava might come and say, you could eat the bread now. Maybe it was just for that minute. Maybe Kodesh Baruch Hu wanted just to wake you up for a second, just so you get that feeling for a moment. But if you just hold on, the emes sheba emes is baramatem. You can never lose that status. But a ben has to learn how to wait for a little bit. Or sometimes you have a sensitive child. And if you say one off word to the kid, he's going to cry in his room for 30 minutes. You have to be very careful. But we have to be a little bit stronger than that. Sometimes the Kodesh Baruch Hu does have to send us a thought, which is a patch. Hold on. Right, who's the strong child? Who really believes in the father's love? The one who could take a musar, could take a rebuke and say, "Tak, it's true. Afal Pikein, he loves me. Afal Pikein, I'm not just gonna run away like a baby. I'm gonna take the musar and I'm gonna stand here. And I'm still a child. So you can give me a musar, but I'm not going anywhere." Like we were saying earlier, says Rabbi Nachman. Sometimes a person thinks in his mind, he's not roy. He's not befitting to be a child of a Kodesh Baruch Hu based on either his connection to Los Ases, or more prevalent is our disassociation with Ases. A person feels he doesn't daven well enough as he could. He doesn't feel like he's living up to his ability to learning, not in the amount of time or the quality of his learning. But we're always judging ourselves. Usually judging based on other people. We're judging what other people think that our potential might be, or what we think other people think about what our potential might be. And we beat ourselves up. We mamish beat ourselves up. It's all this, it's just bilbulim and bilbulim and bilbulim. Nobody said one single word, and yet somehow we're like in the dumps. Because again, what I think that person thinks about what I'm thinking about. So I beat myself up. What are you, crazy? It's an insanity. But sometimes we're in a low place, and therefore we think low machshavas. Hold on. Be mechazik yourself. See if the machshavas change. See if something else comes into your head. If one machshava comes in, maybe another one can come in. Why are we so quick? When it's one bad machshava, we just throw the whole program away. We hold, it's crazy, it's a little bit crazy, negativity, detrimentalism, I made that word up, right? Bad stuff is more powerful in our mind and in the world than positivity. Just look at any newspaper, look at any news. What goes through your body when someone says a negative word to you versus a positive word? The positive word feels good, but not anywhere near as emotional as a negative word. In the news, all come out all negative. So we have all these thoughts that go through our head. Are they real? Are they real? The Torah paskins banim. If you believe you're banim, you're always a ben. So if one thought comes in and says you're not a ben, I don't care. Why do we give so much credence to our thoughts? I don't know where it comes from. Why do we give so much power to our thoughts? If we would put our thoughts, like the Aish Kodesh says, if we put our thoughts, and Rebbe quotes this all the time, if we put our thoughts on a screen during the day, and we would see what we're actually thinking about, there's insanity going through our head. We think the craziest thoughts, right? We think some really, could be sick things too. They're really messed up things we think in our head. They're fleeting, in and out. They're not really who we are. So why is it that we give so much power to the thoughts when they're negative about ourselves? Why? That's an insanity. That's a craziness. Yes or no?
Yes.
Why? We can't do that. We have to step up for ourselves against our own thoughts. Thoughts can also come from the Yetzer Hara. Thoughts also come from a Kodesh Baruch Hu to test us. They're not, and not every thought is real, meaning it's the emes. Many thoughts come to test us to see will we stand up for ourselves. Many tests come from the Yetzer Hara to try to mevalbel us. I don't want to be a bilbul. A person at work comes to you and says something not nice. So what, are you going to be a baby and scream back at them and then and lose yourself and not be able to work the rest of the day because somebody said, you stink at accounting or something? Well, what? We're not 8 years old, 9 years old anymore. Be like, I don't care what you say. Like, who cares? Sticks and stone may break my bones, the words. So machshava is going to throw us off. What's the problem? The problem is that we think that we are our machshavas. So we think they're real. But they're really not. A lot of times they're not. So we have to know this. Rabbi Nachman's teaching us. Machshavas come and machshavas go. But never forget, at the end of the day, Banim Atem Hashem Elokeichem never changes. That's the essence. It's written in the Torah. You can't change that. And therefore, any thought that comes against that is not real. It means, hold on. Say, tell Kodesh Baruch Hu, I'm not leaving because I know, even though the emes is level 1 emes, maybe I've done things wrong. Maybe I'm not utilizing my kochos as well as I could. That's the emes. It's true. I'm not. We can't hide from that. But the emes la'amito, and Nachman talks about there's 2 levels of emes. The emes la'amito is, afal pikein, I'm not budging from this spot. You're right. The emes is, I'm not living up to myself. I've done a lot of things wrong. I haven't been a good boy this year. Emes, it's true. Look at the cheshbon. You're right. But the emes la'amito is, you're still my father. I'm still a ben, and I'm not moving. And hopefully I'll get better this year. That's what Rabbi Nachman's teaching us. So he says, Afal Pikein, I love Lasas Shalom. Even if a person gets a thought in his head that you're not living up to being a ben to Kodesh Baruch Hu, Afal Pikein, you still have to do your thing, he says. What's your thing? Act like a ben. And if you hold on, and you say, I'm not budging, then the thoughts will start to change, and the Kodesh Baruch Hu will send you thoughts of his karvus. Come, my child, come back. You'll start to feel good, positive thoughts. You have to hold on sometimes, right? Like Rav Nachman Hordenker had to hold on, and he was in a quandary. Eat the bread, don't eat the bread. He waited. He wasn't sure what to do. His thoughts were real. And then the thought came, you could eat the bread. And it came in a remez. It wasn't so clear. Orvim, Aravim, Ki be'emes kol Yisrael kulam kuriyim bonam etzel Yisborach, because the emes is Nachman. Every Jew, doesn't matter who you are, kulam kuriyim bonam etzel Yisborach. Oh, you're called a child of Kodesh Baruch Hu. Shittas Rebbe. And therefore, he ends off back where he started from. And therefore, because Rabbi Nachman is teaching us, never move from being a child, never not think you're a child, therefore, you should always express your sicha, your language to Kodesh Baruch Hu. Tell him over all of your problems. Don't hold back thinking, I'm not acting like I should, so I'm not a child, so therefore I shouldn't speak out to Kodesh Baruch Hu. He's not going to help me anyway. That's all intellectual, logical baloney. That's all logical steps. A child doesn't think that way. A child, I could get my
Jewish. If I could just, this is a very important topic, especially the way Jewish children, as opposed to Gentile children, are raised. I mean, my observation through life. I can't tell you it was written in Jung or what's the other psychologist, Freud, or any of these guys. But a child, like you said, believes in what your father, he's God. As the child matures, the problem is you tend to think or believe until you really go out to sea, go out to ocean, and you're dealing with the Arab, with the Gentile, with whoever it is, and you find out, because ultimately the Father gives the candy. Ultimately, Hashem is going to provide somehow, some way. You know, you read these stories all the time.
Yeah.
So you got to be very careful with that. He wants you back because the Jewish child matures into the real world, and sometimes it can, in the short run, be detrimental, which in itself could be part of the eights that Hashem is providing for them to go to another level or what have you. But it's also as good as it is when you're a child, and as you mature, you got to be careful because the world is very unforgiving. And to be a little bit more vernacular, go ahead and have formaldehyde running through their veins, not blood.
This is between us and the Kodesh Baruch Hu. This is between us and the Kodesh Baruch Hu.
I understand.
Because he's the Father. So therefore, Valkein Roy Lanu Lefarsi Chaseni V'Tzarenu Lefanav Yisbarach Keben HaKovel Lefnei Aviv, like a child who's again complaining to his father. To be able to feel that way, it's not intellectual. It takes time to get to such a madrig. Again, intellectual is, I'm not doing good, therefore how could I ask him because he's not going to give me what I want. A kid doesn't think that way. I could get my kid into trouble, well over. I can get my kid into trouble, and 2 seconds later, his sister hits him, and he comes crying to me, even though I just got him in big trouble. The kid doesn't think, I just got in trouble with my father, so he's not going to help me out with the sister who just hit me. No.